This is a dresser I just picked up off of Facebook Marketplace for $60. It's made by the Sumter Cabinet Company. It is in relatively good shape, a little bit of failed finish on the top. This is a 14, did I say 14? 14 drawer dresser. It's really in nice shape. I think the markings of the manufacturer are right there. So not quite sure what I'm going to do about it yet. I'm going to probably keep the hardware if I can get it all polished up. These knobs and this piece right here, the knob is separate from this. So I'll get rid of those plates and keep the knobs, and I think that'll be great. So we'll see. I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I may actually stain this one if I can get rid of that orange. But it's in really great shape, and we'll see what it looks like when I finally get the finish off and the sanding done. So follow along and let's see how this dresser makeover turns out. Okay, so I need to take this hardware off. They unscrew pretty easily, actually. And I'm going to keep these knobs. I'm going to reuse them. They look like they're in pretty decent shape. I'm hoping this one's a little worn underneath. I might have to, you can see how it's worn maybe right there. So I may have to spray them again. So I'm going to clean them up and see if that comes off. It looks like it's just worn. So, but I like the look of the knobs. I mean, I was going to use knobs and I'd buy something that looked like this anyway. So I might as well just clean these up. Okay, so take these drawers out as I go. Now this one, and all of them like this, is a bit of a problem for me, because in looking on the inside of the drawers, there are two other holes. I don't know why there are two other holes, but there are. And since I have pretty much decided to stain this dresser, I need to fill the holes. So, and I gotta get this little plate off. Somewhere around here I've got, yeah. So, and there's two nails here. So not only do I have two holes, let me just tilt this down a little bit. But these nails, and I'm not going to save these plates. These are gone. So let me get this one off. There's a nail. All right. Yeah, I'm just going to throw these away. I'm not going to use these plates for anything. But you see, a hole there, and I got the two nail holes. So I'm probably going to get some wood filler that I can stain. And what I may do is, 'cause I know I'm going to sand part of this dresser, is keep the sand, the sawdust, and mix it with clear glue and use that as a filler for some of this stuff. So it should match then the drawer. That's after I get all this stuff off. So I did a test here with acetone to see if it would take off the finish, and it is. So that is great news. It means that I'm not going to have to use stripper. Whoa, it moved on me. So yeah, this is bringing it off real nice. A little bit of elbow grease, but that's all right. Acetone is really good at removing some finishes. It doesn't work for all finishes, but when it does work, it's a lot easier than sanding, than using stripper. It works really, really well.
and it worked really well on this dresser.
So here's the top. I've got all of it off. It's really pretty, no damage whatsoever. So now I'm going to go back over. I mean, it's amazing with crud cutter and actually clean off residue, and then I'm going to take 220 sandpaper with my Surfprep and lightly sand the top and get it nice and smooth. But this took about a half hour, so it wasn't bad, but it's gorgeous. So it's still kind of orange, so we'll see what the sanding does. And I have to test the stain to see if it's going to take away that orange or see if I have to bleach it. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean it, and so we'll go get some crud cutter and we'll go and clean this up. Okay.
Now that I've got the top stripped down using acetone, I'm going to take crud cutter and clean it off really well, get any lasting residue off, any of the acetone residue off of the top. And once I have that done, and then I will start to sand it. I'm going to use my Surfprep with a 220 sanding pad. Well, it's not really a pad, just a sanding sheet. And we're going to get this nice and smooth. And then after that, we will, I haven't really decided what to do about this top yet. I would really like to keep it without any further stain or sanding. But we'll see as I go along. I still haven't completely decided what I'm going to do because I've got to take care of those holes in the drawers. That's probably going to dictate what I finally do with the entire project. So I'm trying to fill these holes to make them look like the original color of the wood. I'm going to make a long story short. It was a complete failure. I started out with using maple dowels, since this is maple. Now the problem with the dowel, right off the bat, I discovered, is that they're end grain dowels. Yes, there are other kinds of dowels, but end grain dowels, the stain will take stain differently because they're end grain. So that was the first problem. However, beyond that, I mixed up some sawdust with some clear Gorilla Glue. Now, that was also a problem because I guess the chemicals in that glue will pull out the tannins of the sawdust and make it dark. So that didn't work. So I tried to fix that with, color pens, and that just made it worse, actually. But I wasn't done yet. I thought, well, maybe it will take the stain. Well, I tried the stain that I was, just a stain that I was going to start with. Well, it didn't take the stain either. So I popped them out, the dowels, and I decided I was going to refill the holes, put the dowels back in, and then, because the dowels are a little wobbly, so I need something in there to fill up the gaps. I took the same sawdust and I mixed it with Titebond glue. I'd done some research and said this really is the glue that you should be using, or something similar. The original recipe I found, maybe I just didn't interpret it right, but it didn't work. It said use clear glue. Well, so I tried the Titebond, and when it dried and I sanded it down, it also did not look right. It looked dark. So I tried one last attempt. I took some different, excuse me, sawdust. It was not maple. It was lighter, however. And I mixed it, and I attempted one last time to fill these holes to make it look like the wood color. Well, all attempts failed. I couldn't get it to match. I went back and researched. I watched YouTube videos, and even the one says, look how easy this is. At the end of the video, I could still see what the patch was. So this was not going to work. So I abandoned this and decided to go ahead and paint the dresser. So I'm going to be spraying the dresser with the doors in. So I need to either before or after prime those areas where the spray will miss. I actually have put on a mixture of 1-to-1 ratio shellac and denatured alcohol over the whole dresser to seal in the tannins. What I'm doing now is just putting on primer to make sure that the paint's going to grip properly. It may have gripped just with the shellac, but I wasn't sure. So the first time I'd actually sealed anything using shellac, and so I'm going to go ahead and paint um, all the frame with the primer, and then we'll put the drawers in, and then we'll prime the entire dresser. So I've decided not to paint the top, and so I'm going to tape it off so I don't get any paint on the top. And so, this is a really handy dispenser that I picked up off of Amazon, I think. It's got the paper and with a strip of tape along the edge, so it makes it real easy to tape things off. But you have to have it on the right side to do that, and I have to turn it over because I had it on the wrong side. So we're going to tape off the top, and then we're going to go ahead and spray the dresser. So now I'm spraying the primer on the dresser. I'm using a Wagner 3500 sprayer and using Sherwin-Williams Extreme Bond primer. I do thin it a little bit, and then I set the Wagner settings, the flow power or flow control, I guess, to an 8. And then and that seems to work pretty good. So we'll get this on here, and then we will go ahead, and after that dries, put on the first coat of paint. Now that the primer is dry, I'm putting in the first of 3 coats of Sherwin-Williams natural linen, and it's a urethane trim enamel. It's in a satin sheen, and I'm going to sand between each coat, and then after that we will be able to put the top coat on. Actually, before I put the top coat on, I'm going to apply a subtle glaze to the entire dresser. I'm mixing 8 parts of Sherwin-Williams Faux Expressions clear glaze to 1 part Behr weathered gray, and this comes out to be a really nice looking driftwoody type of color. So I'm going to apply this to the drawers and to the cabinet itself, and very subtly to the top of the dresser. And then once I have all of that done, I will then go ahead and put the top coat. Now the way I put this glaze on is I put it on the brush, and then I remove most of it with a deck brush. And then I do a technique called flogging after I have used the deck brush, and it just subtly, it diffuses the paint, I guess, so to speak, over the surface. And it gives a nice kind of a faux wood grain look, but it doesn't have a lot of, faux wood grain lines in it, so to speak. And it just gives a really nice finish to the dresser. Like I said, it's a technique called flogging that I do this, and it just, like I said, it diffuses the glaze, and it just gives a really nice subtle grayish look, driftwoody type look to the entire piece. Now I'm going to do the top, and I'm going to wipe this off. I'm not going to do the same technique on the top because I don't want as much of a glaze effect on the top. I just want subtly, within some of the grain on the maple to take on some of the stain, but I don't want a lot on the top. Just very, very subtle, very light effect. Now that the glaze has dried, I'm going to put on 3 coats of a Minwax Polycrylic. It's water-based in a matte finish. I set the sprayer to a 3 on the I guess it's the air power. I forget the actual name of it, but it's air power on the sprayer. I do not water this down at all. And I do sand between coats using a used Surfprep 220 pad, and that seems to work really, really well. For the top of the dresser, I'm actually going to use a brown paper sack to wipe it down. Um, this is kind of the equivalent of 1,000, maybe 1,500 grit sandpaper. This gives a very, very nice buttery smooth finish, and a lot cheaper than buying sandpaper, because we all have used brown paper bags around somewhere. And so this gives it a hand rubbed finish, and it's just beautiful when you're done. So here's the final reveal. I reused the hardware. I had sprayed it a matte black finish, and then I put a satin, sprayed them down with a satin top coat on top of that. But this came out very, very nice. The glaze I put on here is very, very subtle. You probably in the camera can't see it very well. But when you look at it, it really gives it kind of a coastal driftwood look. I put drawer liners in all the drawers, and I'm really proud of how this turned out. So I want to thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something and sort of learned from some of the mistakes that I made. And if you found this entertaining or useful, please subscribe. And I will see you on the next furniture refinishing project from the next season.